So it's that time of the week, and we're going to go over what those payouts will be for the YieldMax ETFs that I own. We'll update my spreadsheet, and we're also going to take a look at the charts for those YieldMax ETFs, see where they're at, and see if we can get an idea of where they may be headed. Hello my friends, this is Legend. So today we're going to go over those YieldMax ETFs, update my spreadsheet with those distributions, and find out what my new real price per share is. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the Webull chart and let's take a look at those YieldMax ETFs, find out where they're at, as we did have a slight pullback on Friday. All right, so here we are on the Webull chart, and I've got Bitcoin pulled up currently. Now, we were using this 79.5 line right here as that support line, and we needed Bitcoin to stay above that 79.5 so that we can use that as a good support and start moving this back on up. But as you can see, we have since broke down below it. Today, we're sitting at around 77.8, and yesterday we ended up closing at 78 even. So we are somewhat coming down, and it seems like we're using this 77.7, which was our previous resistance line. Looks like we might be able to use that as a support line. Yesterday, it did tap that line right there and then moved slightly up, and today, you can see it also came down and touched that line yet again. Now that support line is one that we had drawn in there for a little while, right? Because we were using it as it was teetering back and forth on it before it actually broke past it. I was hoping that it was going to stay above the 79.5, but it looks like it did come down. We're going to retest this 77.7 and we'll see, can we use that as a good support? Hopefully get back up, break back above this 79.5 and get this thing moving on back up again. Now you can see on the MACD, it is gaining a little bit of momentum on that downward movement. But if we can keep this strong support line at this 77.7, then we might see this MACD here starting to level off and hopefully starting to turn back up and start getting some green momentum bars here. But currently we are moving down, but so far still holding at that 77.7K for our support line. Now, with that move down, that has brought some of our YieldMax ETFs down as well as the underlying themselves have also dropped down. And we'll start right off with AMDY. And here we are on AMDY. You can see it has moved down. It did have that move down on Friday, like I was telling you. And it's not just YieldMax, right? It's not just the YieldMax ETF that dropped. If we take a look at AMD right there, it too had a red day on Friday. So we can see that the YieldMax ETFs are following pretty close to what those underlying stocks are doing. Just AMD versus AMDY is a perfect example. Now, could it keep moving down? Sure it can, right? AMD, if AMD moves down, AMDY will move along with it. But we're hoping to see a little bit of a pop up and start moving back up on AMD. But of course, nothing is guaranteed. But if we were to draw in a support line for AMD, we'll zoom right in here. Now, since we are up, right? I mean, we are at 52-week highs, right? So we are in new territory. So it's really hard to actually pick a support or resistance line at these points, because we are in unknown territory. But if we were to draw a line just to say where we can possibly have a support line, I would pick it about right where we're at right now. So let's draw in a horizontal line, and I'm going to pick right between this candle and this candle. And as you can see, that's pretty close to this candle. So I'm going to pick right in between that, about right there. And as you can see right here, it was having a tough time breaking past it. But once it did, it started off pretty much right there on that line and took off, right? So I'm going to say that roughly 118 is a support line. So we could indeed come down on AMD, test that 118, and hopefully bounce off of it. Would love to see that. And of course, if AMD does that, so will AMDY. We would see a nice little pop up with AMDY, and you know me, I would love to see that. And here we are on CONY. Now for CONY, we did have again a move down on Friday. Now it ended up closing at 2609, and that RSI2 did drop, right? It got down to 13.4, and had it closed with an RSI2 below 10, I could have bought some more shares. Now, who's to say that I probably shouldn't have went ahead and bought shares at the current price of that 2609, but I didn't, right? I was holding off to see if it would actually drop down and get below the 10 on that RSI2. It just did not do it, or at least when I saw it. So I'll have to wait, and maybe Monday, if we have a continued pull down, it's very possible that RSI2 could drop below that 10, give me an opportunity to buy more CONY, and that will just help to lower my real price per share. And we'll take a look at that in a moment once we get to the spreadsheet and enter in those distributions. And for HUI, again, we're just trading sideways in HUI, right? It's just going up and down right within this range of roughly 27 to about 29. And it's just sitting here going back and forth in this range. Just like CONY, HUI I am down on, so I am looking for that RSI2, which is this yellow line at the bottom. I'm looking for it to drop below that 10 so I can purchase some shares in hopes to catch closer to that bottom before it would pop back up. At least that is my plan. And the last one we'll look at on the charts here is SMCY. That RSI2 did get very close to dropping below 10. It actually is sitting at 10.5, so I might get an opportunity to buy some shares of SMCY if that price of that market price is below my real price per share. Then by buying those shares, that would only help to lower my real price per share. And that, number one, gets me more shares to increase my distribution amount that I would earn. And two, it increases the number of shares. It lowers my real price per share average so that when SMCY moves back up, it has less room to move before it goes and gets past my new real price per share average, and therefore gives me more downside protection. So with all that said, let's jump over to that spreadsheet. Let's get those distributions entered in and find out where my real price per share currently sets for each of my high yield ETFs. All right, so here we are on my spreadsheet, and this is my high yield stock tracker sheet. And this sheet is available to all of my Discord members. You'll get a copy of this sheet where you can enter in your own high yield ETF tickers and track where you are currently at in each of your positions. So when you become a member and you click that link to get this sheet, you'll see this first sheet right here, and it's download your copy tab right here. This will be what you'll see at very first. So all you'll have to do is pretty simple, is you'll just need to make a copy of this sheet so that it is then editable for you to be able to enter in your own high yield ETFs. Because when you first get the sheet, it will be a view only. So to make it a sheet where you can access, update, and add in your own high yield ETFs, it's pretty simple. You click File on that sheet and you click Make a Copy. And that is it. You'll name it whatever you want to name it, and you're off to the races. So when you get that sheet, of course, all of this will be blank. But you'll actually be able to go into those individual sheets, enter in what you have, the distributions that you have earned, and the number of shares that you actually purchased. and that will help to generate that real price per share. So to get a copy of this sheet, come on over, join the Discord. That link would be in the pinned comments and in the descriptions below. So speaking of distributions, let's go ahead and get my distributions entered into my sheet, and let's find out what my new real price per share is. And to get to that individual sheet for each one, it's pretty simple. I just hover right over that first ticker, and you'll get a little pop-up. You simply click it, and it takes you right to that individual sheet. And depending on which one you select is that ticker that you'll end up landing on. And that page, you'll go in, enter in your distributions or any purchases that you have made into the columns that are already laid out for you. It'll help to calculate how many number of shares you do have. It will tell you what that current price of that ticker is, and then it will calculate what that real price per share is to find out if you're actually up or down on that position. Now, to help speed this along, I have already entered in those distribution amounts with the X date entered in right here. That date is the X date. Okay, so we earned 56 cents for CONY this week. Now, I have a total of 175 shares. So all I'll do is enter in that 175 right here. And when I hit enter, it's going to update that real price per share from $37.17 down to $36.61. Now, with the current price of CONY being $26.09, if I were to sell all of my shares at that current price of $26.09, I would take a loss of $1,841, which is a loss of 19%, right? This is not a loss of 50%, right? Because my purchase share average over here is 54.13, which is about double what the current price is, right? But I am entering in and capturing those distributions. So I can use those to help adjust and recalculate what my average is, and that is how I'm getting my real price per share. So moving on, we have PLTY. Now PLTY, we earned 43 cents this week. Very nice. Now for PLTY, of course, I am paid off, right? You can see it right there. It says paid off. And that means that the amount of distributions I have earned exceeds the amount of capital that I have invested. So therefore, it is paid off, and all distributions I earn from this point on are free and clear, not including taxes, of course. I have a total of 37 shares. So that's going to adjust and change my real price per share from minus 582 down to minus 625. Very nice, right? Currently, if I were to sell all my shares of PLTY at the current price of $33.72, I would make $1,478. Very nice, right? Very nice. For NVDY, we earn 15 cents, and I have 71 shares. So that's going to adjust that real price per share from $10.13 down to $9.98. Sweet. Now, if I were to sell all my shares of NVDY at the current price, I would make $309. For ULTY, we earned 40 cents this week, and I have a total of 56 shares, which is going to adjust that real price per share from $31.03 down to $30.63. So as you can see, I actually were able to pull that real price per share down further, even though ULTY is at $31.47. So of course, that does give me that extra downside protection. And if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of ULTY, I would make $47. For MSTY, this one is another one that I do have paid off right here, right? It is paid off. So that's why you see this real price per share being a negative number, because it is still calculating that real price per share or the adjusted price per share, which does include those distributions. But since it is indeed more than I've actually have invested, it generates and creates this negative number. So when I enter in that distribution of 53 cents for this week, and I enter in 95 shares, it's going to adjust that real price per share of minus $12.03 to minus $12.57. It's moving further and further on down from that 0 point. As you can see, this number right here, $1,193 up here toward the top. If I were to buy more shares of MSTY, as long as I do not exceed this amount, then I will be able to still stay within the paid off status, because that amount would keep it still to the point where my distributions exceeds the capital I had invested. Now, the estimated number of shares right here says 47. That is calculating off of that current price shown on this sheet of 25.11. So during the market, this could change, right? So always make sure that if you are trying to stay in the paid off status, that you do not exceed the dollar amount, because if you do, then of course you would lose your paid off status and you would have to wait again before the distributions exceeds the amount of capital you have spent. But for MSTY, if I were to sell all those shares at the current price, I would make $3,579. Now, for SMCY, you can see the current price is $6.10. My real price per share is $6.37. So SMCY did drop, right? Because this one was green, that current price was above that $6.37. But it has since pulled back a little bit, just like everything else did on Friday. But we did earn a distribution of 13 cents, but I don't think that's going to get us high enough to turn this one back to green, but it does help to get it that much closer. Because before I enter in that distribution, you can see I'm at a loss of $88. But when I enter this distribution in, let's see what that loss changes to. So I have a total of 325 shares, and that's going to adjust that real price per share of $6.37 at a loss of $88 down to $6.24 with a loss of $45. So see, by capturing those distributions, I'm also keeping my losses down, right? For AMDY, we earned $1.09 this week. Man, I tell you, this AMDY has just been on fire. Now, we did have that pullback, so I don't think that we will probably see another dollar for next week, but who knows what's going to happen between now and then. So I have a total of 164 shares, and that real price per share of $23.14 will lower down to $22.05. So if I were to sell all my shares at that current price of $50.43, I would clear $4,655. For YMAX, we earned 9 cents, and I have 758 shares. So that's going to lower my real price per share of $6.23 down to $6.14. And if I were to sell all my shares of YMAX at the current price, I would make $1,752. For HUI, this one I am down on, but we did earn 43 cents this week. And I have a total of 116 shares. And that's going to lower that real price per share from $39.88 down to $39.44. And that means if I were to sell all my shares of HUI at the current price, I would still be at a loss, but I would only take a loss of $1,368. QDTE, we earned 21 cents on this one this week. A very nice pop up on that distribution. And I have a total of 155 shares. So that's going to lower that real price per share down from $20.54 to $20.33. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of QDTE at the current price of $31.19, I would make $1,684. Now, as you've seen, there are more wins than losses so far, right? And at the end, at the summary page, we'll find out what my new total gains would be if I were to get out of all of these high yield ETFs. But let's move on to IWMY. We earned 11 cents, and I have 551 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share from $14.10 down to $13.99. And if I were to sell all my shares of IWMY at the current price, I would make $2,856. For QQQY, we earned 14 cents this week, and I have 551 shares of this one as well. And that is going to lower that real price per share from $18.33 down to $18.19. And if I were to sell my shares of QQQY at the current price, I would make $3,253. For WDTE, we earned 17 cents, and that has been about what we've made on WDTE for the last few weeks, right? So I have a total of 540 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share from $23.90 down to $23.72. And if I were to sell all my shares of WDTE at the current price, I would make $3,846. Now JEPQ, that one pays out monthly, and it pays out the first of the month. And as you can see, we already have our May payout. So this one does not have a payout this week. So my real price per share of $8.53 still stands. But if I were to sell all my shares of JEPQ at the current price, I would make $2,817. And last but not least is Divo. And for Divo, it's also a monthly payer, and it pays at the end of the month. And as you can see, we are not at the end of May, so this one does not have a payout this week. So therefore, my real price per share of $44.37 still stands. And if I were to sell all my shares of Divo at the current price of $45.37, I would make $16. So that wraps up all of the high yield ETFs that I currently own. And of course, to get back to that summary page, it's pretty simple from each of these individual stock sheets. And all you have to do is hover right over top of that back to summary cell right here. You'll see the pop up and you click it and back to the summary page you go. The summary page is just an easy one sheet to look at to know if you're a green or red. Are you up or down in the play, right? That's simple. CONY, it's red here, so I am currently down in that position. How much am I down? I'm down 19%. What is that dollar amount for that loss? Well, that's a minus $1,841. Well, same goes for PLTY. It's green, which means I am good in the play. What is that percentage that I'm up on that play? 65%. And what is the value if I were to sell out of that one? That would be a total of $1,478. And you can just look through here and you'll see, just like in MSTY, green, I'm good. I'm up 31%. And if I were to sell out of MSTY, I would make $3,500. So it makes everything very easy. So as you can see on SMCY, if I were to sell out of that one, I'm going to take a $45 loss, which is about 1.5% down. So this one, I am very close to that price, and I've been back and forth with SMCY. I've been green, red. It just keeps flip-flopping because I'm so close to that market price. But like I said, if it does end up dropping down a bit more, get below that 10 on that RSI2, I might buy some shares of SMCY. And the same goes with HUI and CONY because those are ones that are red currently in my portfolio. AMDY, I'll make $4,600. YMAX, I make $1,700. HUI, I lose $1,300. QDTE, I make $1,600. IWMY, I make $2,800. QQQY, I make $3,200. WDTE, I make $3,800. JEPQ, I make $2,800. And Divo, $16. So as you can see, when you total them all up, am I up or down in the position? Well, this sheet does it for you, right? It's right here. If I were to sell out of every single one of these high yield ETFs, I would gain and make $23,291. And that is selling them at the current market price that's shown on this sheet, which is the closing price of Friday. And that's why this sheet makes life a bit easier because it's easy just to scroll right through, find out which ones you need to focus on, because if it's red, then those are the ones you can focus on. If it's green, you don't want to buy more shares unless you plan on increasing your real price per share, which will remove some of that downside protection that you would have. And I am not doing that. That's not how I play these. I like to keep that downside protection, so I am first looking for all these to be green. Second, I'm looking to get them paid off. And this sheet will tell you once it is paid off as well. So it's a pretty handy little sheet. It makes life a little easier. You got the one page right here, so during the market day, you can see which ones you need to focus on. And you also know at what price you need to make sure you're buying those shares under. Because if it's above that price, then it's going to raise that real price per share. I only want to purchase them if it's under that price. And for CONY, SMCY, and WDTE, I'm looking for that RSI2 to drop below 10 to give me my buy-in trigger point. So again, if you'd like to get a copy of this sheet, that link will be in the pinned comments and in the descriptions below. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. Until next time, Legend out.